Hi, everyone. Welcome to season 11 of my podcast. This is unbelievable. This is the rabbi season where I reached out to different rabbis that I very much wanted to get a little bit more info on them. And I find them to be very intriguing and they have a lot to offer. And one of them that was at the top of my list was Rabbi Yakov Horowitz. I've done numerous lives with him, and I very much enjoy his work, our interaction together. And I said, that's it. He's definitely coming on season 11, hook or by crook. And I want to get to the heart as much as I possibly can. I only know a little bit of Rabbi Horowitz, but together you and I are going to, my audience is going to get to know Rabbi Horowitz, hopefully a little bit better. So Rabbi Horowitz, could you tell us, you'll introduce yourself, but start off with perhaps where you grew up, and then if this was your dream job, or if there was some other job you wanted to do. Okay.
That the first question might be a little boring, but the second one certainly isn't. So I grew up in Bell Harbor, Queens. I actually was born in Crown Heights. That before it became just a Chabad enclave, it was a lot of Holocaust survivors and that gen. My parents' gen. I'm turning 64 next month. I get a Medicare card in 13 months. So yeah. So I grew up in Crown Heights. My father died when I was 3. My mother remarried 2.5 years later. They moved to Bell Harbor about 2 years after their marriage. They had 46 beautiful years together, and they did a phenomenal job blending their families. So there's 3 of us. We have a half sister who's a few years younger than I am, and a stepbrother a few years that my Abba brought. We didn't use the word step.
Right.
He's my brother. I'm just identifying him as such. But anybody looking at our family never would have been able to tell who's who. My parents treated us equally. I like 3 outside candles every now Shavuos. I say Kaddish for Abba. Somebody asked me when he passed away, I was just curious, so why are you saying Kaddish? Whoever paid for my braces, I'll say Kaddish for.
Oh, God.
He raised us like his own children. He deserved
Right.
the respect, and I have nothing but gratitude to him. So I was just a regular, rowdy, rambunctious student. The energy that I have, thank God, at 63, that lets me do a lot of these projects, doesn't necessarily translate to being a good student in school, especially back in the day when things were more authoritarian in nature. The school was really extraordinarily difficult for me, which is why I developed a passion to help kids who weren't making it in school. So I went off to Eretz Yisrael at age 19. Parenthetically, here's an interesting one for your
Yeah.
listeners. Abba insisted that before I go to Israel, I have to have parnasa. I have to have a livelihood, a way to make a living.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that I said I want to go into kollel, meaning to study Torah after school, after marriage, or go into chinuch and Jewish education, which wasn't even on my mind at the time. I wanted to be an oral surgeon. I went to college pre-med
Oh, wow.
for about 2 years. Yeah. And but he insisted. He said, well, what happens if those things don't work out? How are you making a living? He said, and the Talmud says one of the father's obligation is to teach the children how to swim and teach them how to make a living. He
Right.
said, the Torah didn't give me many responsibilities. This is one of them. And I absolutely insist. And he was a very easygoing fellow. It wasn't like him to insist. He said, I insist that you have to be able to tell me what you're doing for a living before you leave at home to go to Israel.
Mm.
And I went to my Rebbe Rav Pam to talk it over. And he said, your father's right.
Mm.
So I actually went to a 6-month, my father was in the jewelry business. I went to a 6-month class
Gemology?
on jewelry. I'm sorry?
Gemology, like a gemology course?
Yeah, no, not diamonds, jewelry making,
Okay.
how to make nameplates,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't done it in a little while. It must be rusty. But the truth is, it came from a place. I didn't like it. I was so not what I wanted to do, and I didn't do it all day. It was like a 2-hour course in the afternoon.
Hmm.
So I did that out of respect, and I went off to Israel. Um, and there was no time. I had no concept even of going into Jewish education. It was the furthest thing from me. If you would have asked anyone who went to school with me, they would have burst out laughing if you told them that I could be going to Jewish education one day. I actually I got the first year I started teaching was at the age of 17. I went to a summer camp,
Hmm.
and I wanted to concentrate on playing basketball all summer. So I was a pretty good athlete. I was on the varsity team in the summer camps, and I played in the league till I was 48, and my knees
Wow.
started to go. So I told all my friends I'm going to camp, and I give me the job that has the least amount of time of working, so I could play ball the rest of the day. And
Right.
they said learning Rebbe, and my friends, like I said, I wasn't much of a student. I really didn't start learning till I was 16. So they all started howling when they thought that I was going to be a learning Rebbe. And I went to the learning director and I said, listen, give me the 5 students that gave you nightmares last year. I didn't want to prepare.
Right.
So I said, give me 5 students, that the roughest kids that gave you nightmares. I will take them. You will not see them all summer. I'm never going to send a kid to you. And I guarantee you they'll learn more than last year, which was 0.
Right.
So, and I said, but you cannot ask me what I'm learning. Don't test my kids. And most of the time we went on hikes, and I learned for them about 10, 15 minutes a day, 20 minutes. And I just fell in love with it. It took me a few
Mm.
years to realize that that was my calling.
Calling.
So that's the long story. So after we got married, my lovely wife, Uri, um, she I wasn't a real. I told her that I planned on finishing college and going, becoming an oral surgeon. And then we talked, and she saw that that's where my heart was, and she's an incredible woman. She just said, "Go for it if that's what you want to do and makes you happy. Go."
Wow.
So that's
Wow.
how it started.
That's how it started. So first I want to go back to a few things. First of all, my parents also are from Crown Heights, the pre
Right?
Chabad,
Pre-Chabad.
pre
Right.
Chabad. My mom grew up on Montgomery Street.
There you go. I grew up. That's where I lived.
Yeah.
Brooklyn, between Montgomery and Empire Boulevard.
Yeah, I think I would have to ask my parents, but
But
I'm
that was
sure
that area.
it was
Yep,
that
that was the
area.
area.
And my father also, and they met when they were 14, and they were dating since they were 14 and 15, and they became high school sweethearts. My father even went to Crown Heights Yeshiva.
Mm-hmm.
But my mom had gone to public school her whole life, but they were also from that Crown Heights
Yep,
pre
exactly.
Chabad. But
I want
I'm
to ask you when
curious.
you get your Medicaid card.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm curious, was Horowitz your father's name or
My
your
father's name. My
your
father's name.
father's name? So what
You
was your
want
stepfather's last name?
Nudovik.
Say it one more time.
Nutovic. Nutovic.
Okay, very
Nudovik.
nice.
In fact, you want another great story?
Yeah.
When they were dating, second marriages were so uncommon.
Right.
I was one of 88 students in Tarvadas High School, for example. There was one other kid that was a blended family kid.
Hmm.
People hardly divorced then. There were divorces, but certainly not as much. The
Right.
community was smaller. It just, there weren't many. Anyway, at the time, it was common for the stepchildren to take the name of the stepfather.
Hmm.
It was that was more common than not.
Okay.
And Abba said that he wanted Mr. Nudovik Shlomo, his name was. Um, he said that we went to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Actually, he wasn't the Lubavitcher Chassid. The Rebbe lived in Crown Heights at the time, and he was like, he didn't have a whole lot of Hasidim at the time.
Okay.
And my mother was very, very spunky, so he wanted to go talk a few things over. And my mother Lashem, they're both in Gan Eden. My mother said that I'll go to him, but I don't have to listen. Can you see me saying something like that? She said, I'll
Right.
go, I'll listen, but I have veto power.
Right.
So Abba agreed to that. And he suggested that one of the things that he suggested was that they that we take his name. Why? Because he didn't want us. He said they're orphans. All right. Well, it wasn't. There was a lot of logical reasoning there. He
Mm-hmm.
said, look, the kids are orphans as it is. Why should they go to school and hang up a sign on their forehead that, that I'm going to blend it? Again, there were no blended families then.
Mm-hmm.
So he felt that it would be easier for us to transition that way.
Mm.
Because specifically because we were such young kids. I was 6 when they remarried. My brother was 4. My sister was 7.
Mm.
So and my mother walked on the steps on the way out. He told him a lot of different things.
Right.
Um, on the steps on the way out, she said, that's not negotiable.
Right.
So she said, my shviga, my mother-in-law, my maternal grandmother, my father's mother,
Mm-hmm.
she lost her son, and I'm not taking away her grandchildren.
Mm.
That's what she said.
I hear.
That
I hear
that
that.
that
It's his
she said,
memory.
what? Yeah,
It's his
she
memory. It's
said,
your father's memory. It's his name.
right,
What? Right.
and
What do you have left in this world but your name?
right, right. I'm saying, but it was a very progressive thing at the time.
Right.
Most people really did
We're doing that.
take their
Right.
names, and that's what they were encouraged to do.
Too.
They were really ahead of their time.
Wow. Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful. And it's so funny that you want to be an oral surgeon. Everyone in my family is a dentist.
I didn't know that.
My
Okay.
sister, my two brothers, and my father. My father's a retired dentist. Very funny story in our family. One of my brothers, he was majoring in Jewish philosophy in college, and my mother was getting a little nervous. She says, "I don't
That he won't be a
understand."
dentist.
I said, "What are you going to do? Are you going to philosophize money?" And that was like the joke. She said,
But that was the same thing as staying in Kolo. It was the same
right,
idea as studying Torah post marriage, right?
right.
You
So,
want to be a writer, right? You want to
right.
be a writer.
He said, "Don't worry, I'm minoring in the sciences." Lo and behold, he went to dental school, had full
That's
scholarship.
funny. What are
Right,
you going to What are you saying? You're going to philosophize
twice
money?
the money.
I, I
You
so
got to meet
get it.
my parents, Rabbi Horowitz. You
Oh,
love my dad already. You got to meet them.
oh, absolutely. I love what he told you. For
Right,
those who don't know, Jordana, we were talking about Yom Kippur.
right,
We did a live
right.
together on Yom Kippur, and Jordana said that correct me if I'm wrong, that when she thinks of Teshuvah, you remember your dad telling you when you were a teenager and going through a tough time, like every old teenagers do.
Right.
He said, "I love you. I always love you. We'll figure it out. Talk to me." Right? Is that
Right.
basically
And
it?
also, he said, "I'll always forgive you for whatever
I'll
it
always
is."
forgive you.
If
Right?
you,
That's it.
I'll
And
always forgive you.
that's your vision of God, right?
Right, right.
Isn't that
Right.
beautiful? You want your
Yeah.
kids. I always tell parents, you're the closest thing the kids have to God, whether you like it or not.
Right.
That's the way it is.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. And you had such a positive
Thank
image
God.
of God because your father said, "I'll forgive
Right.
you for anything."
Yeah. I'll tell you just another nice story about my dad. I remember I I I got one of the books. It might have been like a Pesach Chromebook. One of the later ones that he had written about an inspiration, something about. I remember had the word inspiration. I knew my father would have liked it. Had all these different stories, and I wrote him a little message in in the book, and I said something to the fact that all these all these stories are so inspirational, but they don't come close to how you inspire me.
Wow.
That's what
That's
I
beautiful.
that's what I
That's
wrote to
beautiful.
him. Yeah, yeah, he's very very beautiful
He's
man.
still alive, your father?
Yes, both my parents are still alive,
That's
thank God.
beautiful.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
beautiful.
thank God.
Please
Yeah, but
convey my compliments to him.
he'll listen. My mom listens to. My mom is listening to this right now. She always says,
To
"Do you have to talk
criticize what
about
you
me?"
said, but to like the compliment.
She's like, "You always have to
Well,
talk about me." I'm like, "It's okay,
well,
ma."
my mother, Allah Shalom, of blessed memory, she was the spunkiest woman. I'm doing a talk this week on my parenting clips. The title is how will you want your children to remember you? That's
Mm,
the title. So I said that historians, I forgot who, but I love the line. He said that during uh, elected officials, people who are very prime ministers, presidents, they have billions of words written about them. 30 years later, they just get a sentence.
right,
The Truman dropped the bomb.
right,
Roosevelt, whatever, Depression, World War II. So I say, what would you want your sentence to be?
right,
So
100%.
So my
Very powerful.
my mom's, she was I mentioned the last club. I think it's Friday's club. I said that before my mother's funeral, I called up all of our children, and I asked them to give me one word descriptions of their grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just so. I read it.
Right.
It was. I would hope they would say stuff like that about me: spunky, funny, hysterical, resilient.
Right.
So she was just a riot. I really, really was a very challenging child. So the last year of her life, I was at a holiday Shavuos program, a hotel program, and the last day I was lecturing on teenagers. So my mother was a little hard of hearing at the end. So she was sitting next to my wife, Udi, and she says during Q&A, she tells my wife, she says, Udi, what was the woman saying? So she says the woman said that her teenager's giving him a very difficult time. She's giving her very difficult. So my mother says, "Ha!" She turns around. She asked my wife to help her turn around. She says, "You think your kid's difficult? You should have seen him." Place went nuts, and the whole meal afterwards,
Right.
I, I she was everybody was pulling up chairs and she was telling her
Right. She
story.
had a whole line.
Oh my God, it was the
You
best.
you weren't the expert anymore. She became the expert because she
That's
produced
right.
you.
She used to call my sisters. I swear, I promise you. She used to call my sisters and say, like, I was at a talk. I mean, they listened to him. It was just hysterical.
Yeah, it's good that you gave her such an achas. It's really very
Thank
beautiful. It's
God.
very nice. Baruch
Enjoyed
Hashem.
every minute of it.
So now, what was your first like teaching position or rabbi position? What was that?
So I went to, I started, I actually, my wife already took a job after we got married. We intended that I would study 2, 3 years full time in Kollel to learn Talmud post learning. I really got into learning Judaic studies a lot, and I enjoyed it very much. And then when she was pregnant with our oldest son, who's 42 now, she just said we had spoken about this a long time, and she just came to me. She just said, Yankee, I'm not turning over the baby to a babysitter. I
Hmm.
can't see myself doing this. So I respected it very much. We talked about it a couple of times, but I said, okay, and then I'll go get a job. So I started to look for a job in Jewish education, and um, I taught a remedial class for 2 years of just 3 children. It was there was no such, they didn't even have a term for it at the time. I did that like right after our wedding, and then 2 years later, in 1982, I took an eighth grade position in Yeshiva Torah Semis, which was a very established school in Boston.
Oh, my
I
brother
taught,
in Borough Park.
yeah, Rabbi Eli Schwartz was my
My
principal.
brothers went to Torah Semis.
There you go.
Ah, so cute.
I taught there from 1982 to 1989. I taught eighth grade, and I went
82 to
through the
89.
what they did is they had a rotation system there that the classes were tracked. That if you got a weaker track for Gemara for Talmud, then you got a stronger class for Chumash for Bible studies, and then you went like you wouldn't get burnt out during the day from teaching the rougher students. And I went to Rabbi Schwartz after 2 weeks, and I said, I can't do this. I'm bouncing around too much. I need to get to know my students. So he says, you mean you want the remedial class? Like I was nuts. You mean you want the remedial class? I said, yeah, they're great kids. I have to bond with them. I can't do it. And I just did that for 15 years. I loved every minute of it. It was just
Wow.
such beautiful, great
So,
memories. I mean, my oldest students are 53 now.
okay. Your oldest students are
Like,
53.
could you imagine? One of
Okay.
them just made a wedding this week.
Yeah, so
And
my brothers are older than that. But they wouldn't have been in the remedial class anyway, you know. Okay.
of course not. Of course not. Yeah,
But
but I just loved every minute of it.
that's so nice. That's so so nice. Beautiful, beautiful. So you were living in Borough Park or in Brooklyn? Where were you?
We lived in Barback. Then we moved to Muncie in 1988.
When it was
Um,
still
and
farmland.
not exactly farmland, but it wasn't as developed as it is now. I wanted the kids to have a backyard and they be able to run around. And the house pricing at the time was much, much cheaper. And we just decided to do that. Thankfully, I was able to find a job teaching there. I taught there for a number of years. And then we had the most beautiful, quiet life. Nobody minded my own business. I'd like to think I was doing a good job at teaching, but that was beyond my class. Nobody knew who
Right.
I was. I just did my own thing. And then I wrote an article in the Jewish Observer, which was the Aguda's monthly newspaper. It was a serious paper. Most people saved them. First of all, Mishpacha, Ami, the Yated, none of them existed.
Right.
So, and it was it was a thin, glossy paper. Rav Shera started it. It folded about 15 years ago. But that was a place where you wrote a serious article on Jewish education or on Jewish life. So, certainly in the black hat yeshiva world. So I was just very frustrated that a lot of the students that were going through my classes, um, I felt that they weren't taught basics of how to
Mm.
learn Gemara and how to learn Chumash. They weren't given the building blocks of Hebrew language or Aramaic or who these people were. That I said at the time, I say now that like Gemara, learning Talmud is a taught law class in a foreign language with no punctuation. I mean, that's literally what it is, and some of the pages out of order. So, and the children weren't given an introduction to it. They were just dropped into class and said, "Okay, open your Gemaras." I
Right.
mean, at the most, a progressive Rebbe at the time would tell the kids a little bit about Mishnah and Gemara,
Mm-hmm.
not nearly what they needed. So I wrote an article about kids abandoning religion, which no one talked about. It was like, remember child sexual abuse 15 years, 20 years ago? Nobody talked about it. And whoever talked about it was disgracing the community.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it was with Teens at Risk when I started. It was in 1996. So I
Wow.
wrote this 4,500 word essay. A New York Times editorial is 800, 1,000 words. Like it was a long piece. And I basically wrote, we're losing a percentage of our children to religion. It doesn't have to be this way. Here are some ideas. And it was pretty innocuous, I thought, but it exploded. I mean, I
Wow.
had such a quiet life until then. We were getting hundreds and hundreds of phone calls every month. We got
Wow.
100 letters to our home address,
Wow.
written letters, and you know, 5-10% wrote that I'm the Messiah because I'm saying whatever people they were thinking about all their
Right.
lives, and 5-10% wrote that I'm an enemy of the Jewish people for talking for talking trash about the schools, about the yeshivas in a public forum. But the vast overwhelming majority of people just wrote begging for help.
Right.
There was no amudim. There were no schools.
Right.
There was nothing. There was the Adelphi Yeshiva was Rabbi Trenk of Zechat Tzaddik Lachar. Rabbi David Trenk had an alternative high school, one, and there was Ohel Children's Home. That's it.
Right. Wow.
There was nothing available for parents, and this was like a novel idea to talk about this stuff.
Wow. Wow.
So I went to Rabbi Shera Zatzal, who was the head of the Aguda, and the last thing he did before he died, the last project he worked on was called Project S at the time. I started a program for kids who weren't making it in school.
Wow. Wow. So this article, if we would use modern day terms, went viral.
Absolutely, yes,
Went
it did.
viral. Wait. I got more comparisons for you, Rabbi Horowitz.
Yes, it
And
did.
just as much as probably today, you get your hate comments and your hate, yeah, and you get your love comments, and then
Right.
you get your comments where people just need your
Help
assistance.
me. Right.
Help
Right.
me. I'm sure it's the same.
Same thing. Nothing
Hasn't
changes.
changed.
Just the details changed. Right.
Right, exactly. The
Actually,
platform. The
that's
platform changed.
right.
That was it.
That's exactly the way it was. Exactly. And imagine I mean, people would really be shocked. A lot of people listening to this would really be shocked. I mean, I'm a straight shooter.
Right.
Um, the Aguda is run by the Rashi Yeshiva, by the senior, for lack of a better term, heads of the black hat yeshivas,
Hmm.
of the rabbinic seminaries and the like. And Rabbi Shera brought me to quite a few meetings of these elderly giants. The leaders. They were now. I think of Shmuel Kamenetsky. He should live and be well and have a refuah shlema. I think he's the only one that's still alive from that group.
Wow.
So they're all in Gan Eden now. Rabbi Mitzke Rebbe, my Rebbe Rav Pam, Rabbi Levin. And he brought me to the meetings to report on what I was seeing in the street. And it was fast. I was terrified, first of all. I was holding on to I asked for a lectern, to hold on to while I was talking. My hands were shaking. I was 37 years old.
Right.
And these elderly rabbis that I revered and adored were asking me kinds of questions and what I thought about
Yeah.
this. Like, what are they? And it was really incredible. They were open. Like, I walked in the first meeting. I had a list of 130 boys who were in no school setting at all.
Wow.
In within a 2-hour drive of Metro New York. I had a list of 130 boys. They were in no schools. And in the conversations, the rabbis asked me, what do you recommend, Rabbi Horowitz? So I said I had to set my secretary checked. We looked into the information of all of these kids. The average kid had already attended 4 to 8 schools. Again, there were no remedial programs. So none of those schools were equipped for a kid with ADHD, and which what we know today is
Mm-hmm.
ADHD, or a kid with a processing difficulty, or difficult home environment that wasn't getting counseling. So I told the Rosh Yeshiva, I said that I don't see the ninth school being different than these. I think we should get them jobs and have a voluntary 1-hour class at night, which they all will attend. And let's get them off the streets. The kids were
Right.
boosting cars. They were getting into trouble. And they unanimously gave me the green light.
Wow.
I know the
Wow.
public at large some might find this difficult, that they were so responsive, and so it was remarkable. It was really remarkable.
As you're talking, I'm just going to sidetrack for a second, just out of curiosity. Have you ever sat down with Rabbi Kalish and had conversations with him?
Yeah, yeah, yes. Sure. But it was pre-Waterbury,
Right.
Waterbury.
I know
Yes,
this is pre but I'm saying now that you see, because I had a son that went to Waterbury,
yeah.
so
It's
so
fantastic. Yeah, we spoke a few times. I mean, I didn't, like, I'm from the older generation.
right, right,
I'm delighted. I have nachas, I have joy, seeing what he's doing, and many others like him that are
right.
that are doing great work with the kids.
So now, when did
Um,
the shift happen for you? Because I know you went for a little, the at risk, but then you also became very much the advocate of abuse
yeah.
and the sexual abuse, so on and so forth. So was there like a shift? Did you write another article that like?
That's a good question. I've been writing articles all along. I actually wrote a Mishpacha magazine in 2007. I wrote about 50 columns for them over a period of 2 years. But I started writing because I wanted to write about child sexual abuse. And I wrote 3 columns. They were very brave, 2007. Um, if you send me an email, I'll send you the pieces. At the time, it was revolutionary. I mean,
Right.
I wrote openly. The first of the 3 columns was called The Monster Inside. That
Mm.
was the title. And I started the column by writing about that cartoon character, the Roadrunner. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Did I just date myself? Was it
But I know
around?
the Roadrunner. Beep 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 beep.
Right? Yes. So I wrote that I was trying to convey the time. I mean, nobody was ready for this. So I wrote about this Roadrunner. I don't think I wrote a cartoon character, and the good guy's chasing the bad guy, and a bad guy's chasing the good guy, and the good guy gets into a room, locks the door, and goes, whew, and then a second later, you see the bad guy next to him. So I
Mm.
wrote in the piece that we're building these walls around our communities. The monster's inside.
Decide.
I wrote that, and they published it to their great credit, to Mishpacha's great credit. A lot of people bust their chops about the not having women's pictures. I've written about that also.
Right.
I think I wish they changed their policy, but they were extraordinarily brave that they posted the columns. One of
Wow.
the editors told me that she said, "Rabbi Horowitz, I believe you, I trust you, but this sounds insane. Like, it just, like, nobody talked about it because
Right.
it sounded like it didn't exist. I mean, I started I started getting involved in this, Jordana, because I realized, after dealing with this population from 1996 till 2001, let's say, for those few years, that a very high percentage of them had been abused.
Mm.
That's how there's a logical bounce
I
to my
got,
career.
I hear.
That's the logical flow. After dealing, I spent a great deal of time dealing with this population. I started to notice that many of them had been abused.
Mm.
So I started to talk about it and write about it, and I look back to those old articles, and it's it's a little frightening. You see, I show you some of the pieces. I'll send you some of the pieces, Jordana, if you like. You see, you could hear the panic in my writing.
Mm-hmm.
You see, like the panic, or like I would talk about, guys, don't you see? But like
Right.
screaming, begging people to listen. You know, nobody saw it because the victims weren't coming forward.
Right.
And they were shamed into submission, and therefore nothing came public. So it was a vicious cycle. So the but those of us who were in the street dealing with the kids saw it right openly. So we started writing about it and writing about it and writing about it, and eventually, little by little, things started to turn. But those
Mm.
first few years were extraordinarily lonely, really were.
Mm. Wow.
I mean, not for me, God forbid. I mean, I'm just saying it was lonely writing about it. That I'm not comparing my trauma to the.
Right.
I was never abused as a child. I mean, some people, everybody thinks it. The question, no, but not everybody asks. But um, I wasn't abused myself. But I certainly, I just saw what I saw, and I said, I cannot be silent. I have to speak
Right.
up.
Wow. Wow. So going back on your career a little bit and your interactions with the students and the boys and people, what would you say was probably, you must have had a lot of rewarding moments. Is there one that sticks out in your mind above and beyond the rest of them, or one that you want to share with us that maybe doesn't stick out, but it's just rewarding
Well, it
anyway?
wasn't. It wasn't one. It was really. It was all of them finding a safe space to learn. It was that feeling that the kids had of just being able to speak and ask questions and challenge what I was saying, and saying I don't know. I started every class the same every year. I never made these speeches, these day one speeches.
I don't do
Uh,
them either.
oh God, it makes me crazy. It used to make me crazy. I have kids comes from the first day from school. What you learn? A lot of rules. What a lot of things. I used to get to say, guys, I know nothing about you. I said, some of you I've seen roaming the halls. I never did a scouting report. Never. I never did a scouting report on any students. I said, you have absolutely a fresh start with me. And the second thing is, you can ask any question you want about anything. And I said, try me out, because sometimes I'll be tired and I might not be concentrating, and it'll be in your benefit. I said, if you ask me a question and my response, like, what a silly question. Like, if I roll my eyes, or I convey body language in some way that embarrasses you, I will give the entire class off 24 hours from learning. Meaning, if it happens 9:30 in the morning, we have the rest of the day off, no homework, and we reconvene at 9:30. So test me, ask me anything you want, and worst comes to worst, I'll give you a look, and then you're off for a day. So I tried to create the culture that they could ask me whatever. And I guess I shouldn't have been surprised, but the kids were missing real basic information, as if they hadn't even, some of them, as if they
Right.
hadn't gone to school at all,
Right.
because they missed the train, especially Gemara. Once they start Talmud, Chumash are little pieces, segments, but Talmud you got to follow it. And so, I mean, it was really rewarding watching the kids grow and learn. And, some succeeded more than others, but I think they all felt comfortable. I never raised my voice, ever, ever,
Mhm.
ever. And again, that was corporal punishment was the norm then,
Right.
so
And
that was
how'd your kids take to all of this? Your own children?
my children.
Yeah.
I actually, before I wrote the article, I actually asked each of them permission.
Mm.
And because I told them that I never want you to, You tell me if anybody ever tells you Rabbi Horowitz's son shouldn't do this and Rabbi Horowitz's daughter shouldn't do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to tell all the teachers they are to be treated like every other child. Don't you ever mention to them that Rabbi Horowitz is da 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth of the matter is, how did they treat it? I I think that I know they're proud of they were proud of what I was doing. Um, I really shut the house down once I started these projects. We never had a guest after that.
Mm.
I went to my Rebbe Rav Pam. I used to have students over. I mean, today you wouldn't do it because of,
Right.
because of abuse boundaries.
Right.
But then, like the best Rabbeim invited kids to their home for lunch, from Shabbos meal. And I went to my Rebbe Rav Pam and I said, Rebbe, I don't want. I said, I really want to. I think I'm locking my house down to guests. And he said, just I'm just. I said I want to discuss it with Rebbe. So he said, why are you doing this? I said, I don't want my kids to feel that they had to wait online to talk to me. So he said, if that's the way you feel. So the kids had friends of theirs. That was we never had a guest. What's it? Almost 30 years.
Wow.
Till the kids were out of the house, my wife and I never had guests over.
Wow.
And
Wow.
we didn't have students over. The door was closed. I was just Yankee Horowitz in sweats. I never made a fuss. I never, in my clothing, I dressed. I became a school principal, for 22 years. Obviously, I would dress for the role, but I never took myself seriously. That I would walk in the street if I was going golfing. I would go in shorts and a golf clothing. I wanted the children to be raised in a regular home without any pressure that comes along with being a rabbi's kid.
Wow. Wow. I remember some time ago, you could give me more details if I'm remembering it correctly. You used to do, and maybe you still do it, and I don't even know. You used to do a program. Was it like Rosh Hashanah time? You used
I
to
would
run.
volunteer. I would volunteer for a program. I volunteered
Okay, you were volunteering on a
with,
program, right?
kids in substance abuse. Yeah, with kids in
Yes.
recovery. Yes, it was a wonderful program called Madregos.
Right. That's what it was. Yes.
And we volunteered. My wife Odi and I, my lovely wife Odi, she's amazing. She's really been a full partner in everything. Um, did you ever see the picture from our dinner when we were honored?
Yes. Yes. And I know that's your profile pic.
That's Yaakov and Udi. It's the Rabbi Yaakov and Udi.
Right.
And my rule was that her picture had to be on every invitation and every ad. And some of the papers wouldn't run the ads. And my board asked if they could do a different, and I said, no, they don't like it. They're not running it.
Mm.
But she was really incredible. Well, she's an artist. She's talented. She was designing office buildings and stuff. She's an incredibly talented person, but she just dropped everything for the children and to do whatever we decided we wanted to do to help kids. So we volunteered for 8 years to spend Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur with recovering addicts, with kids in
Right.
recovery. It was a life-changing experience.
Wow.
I was davening for the Amid in the shul, and I was leading the congregation. I really liked it. I enjoyed it very much, and I thought about it a lot. And I said Jeremiah would say, Yirmiyahu, the prophet, would say that I should leave this nice crowd that I was praying with and go stay with the kids who are experiencing different. That's what I said. What would Jeremiah say?
Right.
He would tell me that, what would to
Right.
say. So we did that for 8 years,
Wow.
and they whenever they structured the program differently, they don't have as many volunteers. So I was glad to go back to my life, but it really was very meaningful and a great eye opener to me.
Now, now you're not in the classroom anymore.
No,
You're,
no,
you're not a principal anymore.
no,
You know. So I know you're doing your own. I know what I see on social media,
no.
and I know you're an advocate for a lot. So why don't you tell us like the different programs and the different? Because I know you have the bright. I don't remember
Right.
the name.
Yeah,
You say what
yeah,
it is. Go ahead.
so basically, what I decided, um, one of the primary reasons that I stepped down from the yeshiva, and I really wanted to be able to spend more time with my grandchildren.
Right. I get
We
that.
have. I'm sorry, you
I
get
get
that.
that.
Well, we have 5 children in 5 states. You
Wow.
know that. So I had this dream they're all going to be in the cul-de-sac around the corner. God has a sense of humor, so I didn't want to be tied down,
Hmm.
and I wanted to have the freedom to be able to hang out with the grandkids and and be able to really spend time with them. They're going to be grown up soon, and that chance you don't get again. So Woody and I talked about it a lot. It involved a lot of change. But we have a child abuse prevention. We have a child abuse book that I'm doing a big program the next couple of weeks to get parents to. We're offering it for $5 a book, free shipping for sales of 20 books or more,
Wow.
and it's also on Amazon page for like $8. I'm really encouraging parents to buy it. I thought of a new way to package it, to explain it, and I'm telling parents that it's not about having the conversation. Remember when we were younger, parents would have the talk before the
Right.
kids went to summer camp. It's about having the right conversation,
Mm,
and that the what I really am trying to explain to parents is that the conversation itself, if you just scare the kids, you frighten them. The research shows they don't remember anything. They
mm,
don't remember what you're telling them, and you really have to give them very complicated messages that people who look like us could be abusers, and
right.
people in the family and people there. So, and you're supposed to do it in a way that has just a little bit of seriousness, but not fright. So, I don't think the average parent has the tools to have this conversation.
Mm,
So we made a tool. We made the safety book so that parents can do this. In other words, if a parent sat down with a child of theirs and says, people, your uncle could be abusing you, or people who look like us, or people in the family, the kids would go
mm,
bugged out of their brain. I mean, they would go nuts. So we made a book that you just show them a picture, and that picture shows that and does it. So I'm really encouraging parents to get the book. And I really chose a couple of years ago to jump into this Instagram space that was so foreign to me. I, I cannot begin to tell you. It was like I, I used to get a headache. I would go on Instagram and see everybody jumping around like I'm 63 years old. Like it was so not from, but I was feeling very out of touch with the Gen Z parents.
right.
I'm very self-aware, Baruch Hashem. I have a lot of faults, but I'm very self-aware. And I just felt I don't understand their lives. And I said to myself, I'm going to stop giving parenting classes if I don't feel that I'm engaged with them and that if I don't understand their lives. So I made this very gutsy move to just go all in. And I'm delighted with the way things are turning out, Baruch Hashem.
Yeah. I remember in the very beginning, remember, I think one time you messaged me, you're like, Jordana, you're going to be my social media Rebbe.
That's something I would have said. That's something I would have said.
That was very cute. And I'm not no whiz either, but it was just funny. It was just very cute.
Well,
It was
I
very
needed,
cute.
I needed. Well, by the way, that line comes from something I told an officer in the 70th precinct in Brooklyn. I found out in 1998 that Orthodox kids were dealing drugs in
Mm,
Brooklyn, and there was a whole system with the payphones. I mean, I didn't believe it. The kids told me. The kids I was working with, Rabbi, there are kids dealing drugs from kids. I said, what? So, so they took me. They told me where to stand. There were certain payphones that
mm,
you walk up to, on Avenue J and Avenue M and 13th Avenue and 16th Avenue, and the kids would go over, and there was a system, like you put out fingers for right pocket meant marijuana, left pocket was ecstasy at the time of the thing, and they would flash numbers of what they wanted. Then they would go around the corner, and someone would do a deal with them.
mm.
So, I, when I found out, my first reaction was, I got to learn about this. So I went into the precinct and I told the sergeant behind the desk, I said, I need a drug revy. Honest to goodness. I need a drug revy. He said, what? I said, a revy means a teacher. I said, I'm a yeshiva guy. I don't know anything about drugs. I said, I'm just a rabbi type. I'm clueless. I found out that there's drug dealing in the community and among our children, and I feel a responsibility to learn about it. So that's
Right.
the drug Rebbe became the Instagram
Very,
Rebbe.
okay, wonderful.
I don't know where it came from.
Yeah, but this has been great, Rabbi Horowitz. I mean, we could go on. I think the two of us schmoozing, but the time is late. And but if somebody wanted to contact you, what's the best way they can reach you? Why don't you tell us?
The truth of the matter is, I still haven't solved this problem in 25 years, 20, almost 30 years. I, I, I really, I just don't have the time to respond to people, to wonderful people who are trying to get in touch with me. One of the reasons that I made, if people want to get in touch with me and they want to learn because they're having issues with their children, go to the parenting clubs. That's what I would tell you. That's
Okay.
the God's honest truth. That's the God's honest truth. I still have not figured that out in all the years. I'm honored that people trust me and value my opinion and want to get in touch with me. It's dishonest to give you my email address and say I just
Right. No, I
I
appreciate that.
made these clips specifically to say what I would tell parents about a wide variety of topics. We're actually bundling them. My assistant is bundling them now, so I'll have a link with specific topics. You want to
Okay.
know what? If you want to get in touch with me, you're probably going to get frustrated, and because they won't be able to get me on the
Mm,
phone or in person. So I would say look at what I'm prepared for you in terms of content. That's the God's honest truth.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rabbi Horowitz, for coming on. This has been wonderful, and we're going to have to try this again, okay?
Pleasure. Anytime.
Okay.